You could be the first to mention the Three Gorges Project while discussing the well-known large-scale water conservation projects in China. Apparently, China has a proposal for a project called the Super Water Conservancy that is much more challenging than the Three Gorges Project. The budget investment might be more than $4 trillion. If the project is successful, it will significantly reduce the issue of water scarcity in western China and transform the endless desert into arable land. From its start, this mega-project idea has been often discussed, and India has even come out against it. What precisely is this initiative, then? Why hasn't it already begun? In addition, why does it enrage India? Water is one of the main obstacles to China's future development since the nation's 1.4 billion citizens and expanding businesses depend on it. Before we go on, subscribe to China News to watch about the most amazing world projects. Ready? Let's go on! China, while having one of the top 5 greatest freshwater resources per capita, suffers from severe water shortages that are made even worse by extremely unequal regional distribution and precipitation. While the south is vulnerable to devastating floods, the heavily populated north has chronic water shortages. China has started work on a massive engineering project to better distribute its water resources. The SSW to DOT South-North Water Diversion Project, expanding the biggest water transfer project in the world. Mao Zedong, who came to the conclusion that the South had plenty of water and the North somewhat less, originally put out the concept in 1952. If at all feasible, the North ought to take a little sand from the South, and WD accomplishes just that. It uses 3 routes, the Eastern, Middle, and Western, to move water from the South to the North. The westernmost and most contentious route is still under construction. Chinese President Xi Jinping declared in May 2021 that China will move on with the biggest water diversion project in the world. Plans for the western routes are divided into 2 groups: moderate government plans and ambitious academic suggestions. The Yangtze and Yellow rivers are connected by the western route, which is officially planned to drain 17 billion cubic meters of water annually, or almost 7 million Olympic-sized swimming pools, to Gansu and nearby provinces. Professor Wang Hull of Tsinghua University offered an additional idea from 2017 regarding the Red Flag River. It intends to send 60 billion cubic meters of water per year from transboundary rivers on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau, including the Salween, Mekong, and upstream portions of the Brahmaputra, to northwest China. As a result, Xinjiang would gain 133,333 square kilometers of agricultural land, while the Northwest would get a 150,000 square kilometer greenbelt. Yet, as a potential alternative to the western route, scholars and geographers have questioned its viability. 2015 saw the proposal of the Tian project by researchers from Qinghai and Qinghai universities, the largest weather modification and artificial rain-making system in the world. In order to produce 5 to 10 billion cubic meters of rain yearly above northern China, the 10-year initiative employs glacial ice cloud seeding. India has long been concerned about China's ambitions to divert the Brahmaputra, and it was mentioned in Shanghai's 13th five-year plan, fearing water shortages as a result. Yet this is a false impression. The Yangtze and Yellow rivers, not international rivers like the Brahmaputra, will be used as a source of water for the official western route. Furthermore, the central government is not taking these unofficial ideas very seriously. Let's see now. Why is India so concerned about China's unofficial plan, the Red Flag River project? Would India's interests actually be affected by it? In order to provide water supply capacity for the broad northwest area, the Horseshoe River project will primarily employ the Brahmaputra, Nujiang, and Lunsong rivers as its water sources. These rivers are rich in water and have a low water usage rate. After joining with other water sources, the project first draws water from the Brahmaputra's large bend. After roughly 60 kilometers, a tunnel must be dug to access the Lunsang River. The water is fed into the Brahmaputra by a variety of water works including tunnels, open channels, and reservoirs after traveling for around 43 kilometers where it joins into the Jinja River. From there, the water must travel for another 100 kilometers. After crossing across a few significant rivers, skip the whoosh sailing and head instead for the Hershey Corridor before ultimately cutting across the edge of the desert to reach the Hotan and Kashgar regions. Several people questioned whether this complicated, far-off Hanshu River project could indeed resolve the Northwest water consumption issue. After the Hanshu River project is completed, experts predict that the amount of water that can be transferred to the Yellow River annually may exceed 60 billion cubic meters. Almost half of the typical discharge for the whole Yellow River may be found in here. It can not only increase China's agricultural production while making use of the hundreds of millions of acres of farmland along the Yellow River that have been abandoned owing to a severe lack of water. As the project will eventually travel across the edge of the desert, it is crucial to support the economy along the Yellow River. It is possible that it will be able to solve the problem of soil erosion in the area and put a stop to the further spread of desertification in the region. The influx of water has the ability to transform the local climate and natural environment for the better for a very long period in the future. Even if only a little piece of the desert is transformed into an oasis, this may help the tourism business in the Northwest thrive. In point of fact, the notion of the project that came before this one makes it very plain how complicated the Hanshu River project is. The 6188 total kilometers of natural rivers that are included in the project can only have a tiny part, perhaps a few hundred kilometers, of their potential utilized. As a result, China is responsible for finishing the project's over 6,000 remaining kilometers. Since that time, the Hanshu River project has developed into one of the water conservancy projects that has the biggest amount of water diverted, as well as one of the projects that is the longest and most difficult to complete. Building operations also carry the danger of triggering natural catastrophes owing to the location's proximity to an earthquake zone, as well as the location's high height and steep descent. Scientists also find it tough to evaluate the stability of the water transfer volume for the Hanshu River project, despite the fact that the original prediction was for 60 billion cubic meters. But in fact, it turns out that it is extremely tough to attain this purpose after evaluating the water supply increase of those rivers one at a time. According to the figures, the ideal yearly water transfer volume can only be achieved by transferring a total of 44 billion cubic meters of water, which is around 70% of the initial plan. Because the architecture of the project calls for some rivers to flow into India and other countries, there are some diplomatic challenges that I will be unable to ignore. India consequently pays great attention to developments in the higher reaches whenever China has objectives in that sector. Exaggerated remarks issued by the Indian media would fool the Indian people and rapidly exacerbate the imbalance between the two nations. In point of fact, China has provided clarifications on several occasions. As an example, you may use the Brahmaputra River. China's technological advancements won't be able to reduce their discharge, despite the fact that they are at the higher reaches. It is possible that it may be beneficial in reducing the floods that occur in the northeastern area of India. As a result, they have absolutely no need to be concerned. As a direct consequence of these problems, China has refrained from rushing into any construction endeavors. We can only keep our fingers crossed that the engineering team will be able to fix each problem one at a time and promptly give adequate water to the Northwest region. Click on this video to watch about the most shocking China's project.